Good morning, everyone. Hello, and welcome to this Cloud Management Study Executive Briefing. Earlier this year, cloud consulting and managed services organisation Xtravirt and cloud technology company VMware commissioned Forrester Consulting to undertake some market research. The study was designed to dig deeper into the experiences of those businesses who have already, at least to some extent, adopted hybrid and multi-cloud and have been getting to grips with it. The study explored three main areas, all of which will be discussed today. Firstly, where do multi-cloud strategies stand today, and what are the factors driving cloud adoption? Secondly, are there barriers faced by businesses that prevents the benefits of a multi-cloud strategy being fully realised, and what approaches might firms take to break through these? And finally, are managed services providers relevant in a multi-cloud world? What do businesses expect from them today? And can they really help firms optimise their cloud strategy? Before sharing the key findings of this study, let me introduce you to our panel of experts. We've got Gavin Jolliffe, CEO of Xtravirt. Good morning, Gavin.
Morning.
We've got Robin Gardner, Strategic Services Director at Xtravirt. Good morning, Robin.
Morning, Emma.
And we've got Joe Baguley, VP and CTO for EMEA. Morning, Joe.
Hi there.
Great to have you all here. Right then, I think we're all set to go. Gavin, perhaps I can just ask you first, why was it important to commission this study in the first place?
Yeah, thank you, Emma. And I guess we really wanted to objectively explore experiences that organizations are having around cloud adoption and management, based on a number of themes that we were seeing emerging with customers. I think with the significant changes and impacts of the last year and some of the compelling events driving digital transformation, and we felt that the beginning of this year was a good point to take this sort of litmus test of the business experience of adopting and managing multiple clouds. So between ourselves and VMware, we share this common interest. And so we teamed up and engaged with Forrester to carry the study out. And well, I think, we kind of all had a reasonable sense of what was going on in the market. I think even we were a little bit surprised by the results. So, really looking forward to getting into the discussion.
Excellent, thank you. Well, without further ado, I'm going to play a show reel now with Stu and Alison, and they will be presenting the findings of our study.
In early 2021, Xtravirt, together with VMware, commissioned Forrester Consulting to undertake a study looking at the cloud adoption and management experiences of firms who have already embarked on the journey to multi-cloud. Let's take a closer look at some of the findings. Firstly, just how many of the organisations participating in the study have moved to multi-cloud?
85% of survey respondents reported that their firm runs applications on 2 or more cloud types. Yet, when SaaS services are also included, it's clear that many of these firms already have a multi-cloud strategy in place for hosting applications. So perhaps many organizations are operating a multi-cloud strategy without even realizing it. The study also measured the appetite of our participants to progress further with a multi-cloud strategy. Whilst nearly half of those surveyed had already adopted multi-cloud in some capacity, a further 37% were planning to adopt it in the next 12 months. This data tells us that multi-cloud is a very relevant conversation for businesses, and that the conversation is transitioning from if they should adopt to how it should be adopted.
So if multi-cloud remains the destination for many firms, what can they expect? Many cloud adopters face significant roadblocks and are finding it hard to evolve to the next level of cloud maturity. An overwhelming 97% of surveyed decision makers said their firm struggled adopting the cloud, and of those, the challenges of keeping control of costs, protecting data, and ensuring security and compliance were called out by over 36% of respondents. What's more, we are seeing a fourth challenge emerge. Rising from 24% to 33%, access to skilled resources becomes a more prevalent challenge when businesses transition from cloud adoption to steady state, further complicating the task of managing the growing cloud.
In the final part of the study, the role and relevance of managed service providers in the cloud world was explored. With 48% of those surveyed already invested in MSPs and a further 38% looking to adopt in the next 12 months, the study highlights the growing appetite for MSPs. The study also highlights the top 11 benefits organisations expect from working with an MSP. If we take a look at each of the top 3 expected benefits, over 47% stated access to a broader range of apps and services, improved app to infrastructure performance, and higher developer satisfaction.
While most organisations are running hybrid and multi-cloud models, they're now facing new challenges to maintain the benefits of cloud. Cloud presents a real opportunity to accelerate business transformation, but firms should be seeking the guidance and support of experienced cloud managed services providers to complement existing IT teams.
Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the rest of the executive briefing.
So there we have it, some really interesting findings there. I'd like to sort of start the discussion, if I can, around the topic of cloud adoption. Joe, perhaps I come to you first. Is VMware seeing companies consistently plan for a multi-cloud strategy, or are they falling into it as a result of other changes? And then to the group, how can organisations best execute a multi-cloud strategy to ensure they get the best outcomes and benefits they want to achieve?
Yeah, no problem. So it's interesting because, as was said in the video there, I think a lot of people already kind of stumbled into a multi-cloud strategy because of maybe adopting SaaS and other solutions anyway. So they're kind of already using multiple clouds. And there's been a definite shift in my eyes in how people have been approaching their cloud strategy generally. So, go back 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, a lot of people were trying to pick one cloud. I'd go and have conversations with a CIO and they'd say, oh, well, we're all in on cloud X or we're all in on cloud Y. I think the world's moved on from that most definitely as people realize that that's probably not the best strategy because not one particular cloud is going to provide everything you need. I always liken it to in 1995, a CIO telling me they're all in on Compact, for example. It just didn't sound right then. It's not going to sound right now. So I think what we're now seeing is that companies are starting to plan for a multi-cloud strategy, but they're realizing it's being driven by something else. And it's being driven by them looking at how their applications are built. And actually, the conversation shouldn't be, I need to be in multiple clouds. It should be, I need to look at how my applications run, which applications I need to modernize, and what the application roadmap for my company is for maybe the next 3 to 5 years. That will then drive me through a series of choices into which place is the best part to run, which bits of those applications. Once you do that, you then realize that you're going to need to have to run in multiple clouds. And at that point, you then realize, okay, I'm going to have a multi-cloud strategy, a strategy around operations, around risk, around everything else associated with integrating with other people. I think that's where the challenge comes. It's not as simple as people first thought. I'll just lift all my stuff and put it in that cloud over there. They're now going, oh, okay, I'm now going to have to start to use multi-clouds going forward. That's quite daunting. How do I deal with the complexity involved in that from all the other bits and pieces that you'd assume? So yeah, I think people are coming to a realization now that it's a reality and looking more at the challenges they're going to have to face.
Great. And Gavin, Robin, is that a similar sort of, similar sort of sense of what's going on and what you're feeling at Xtravirt?
Yeah, I think we're definitely seeing that as well. We're having conversations with customers around where they need to place their workloads to ensure that it's close to the data set, to the data that those workloads are transacting with. And alongside that, how they ensure that they've got the skills necessary to manage those integration points. Too often, the multi-cloud programs are focused, to Joe's point, on a movement of a set of workloads or a set of objectives into a single cloud, and neglect to look at the complexities then of backwards integration. So investment still doesn't focus on the enhancement of the legacy or the left behind platforms and technologies to ensure that they are well maintained as well. And it's not just about public cloud, private cloud, it's about how to have an operational and management and an investment strategy that covers all of those areas.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing here from the study is that the long-term implications, where there are these sort of mixed outcomes, reflects probably 3 things. Multi-cloud preventing businesses from effectively adopting, finding maybe that the models aren't as sustainable based on the perceived target operating system, or maybe that's not as it was intended. And there's this real risk of creating new legacy just dressed up in slightly different clothing. And I think that's emphasized, in the response that nearly 80% said that the challenges are having a negative impact on their firm's ability to realize their intended outcomes. And I think that's quite strong.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I think, you know, we've all sort of established that cloud adoption isn't just alive and well, but you know, would really benefit from some careful strategic planning. I'd like to move on now, if I may, to look at some of the challenges that come after the adoption phase and focus more on the ongoing cloud management challenges firms face too. As a reminder, the study found that many of the challenges experienced during the cloud adoption phase carried through into ongoing cloud management. In fact, some of the challenges even intensified. Perhaps the most significant example of that was the reported lack of access to skilled resources. Post-adoption, when it comes to the complex task of managing a growing cloud ecosystem, a lack of people with the right skills and experience to support this new strategy is causing real problems for firms. Gavin, I'd like to ask you why you think that the top 3 multi-cloud challenges, which if we remember were security and compliance, controlling costs and data protection, are so common to businesses. And then on a wider basis, what are your thoughts on the growing issue of this skills gap?
Yeah, thanks for that, Emma. I think if I stand back and reflect, I think whether organizations are, you know, strategically, tactically, or organically, you know, ending up adopting multiple clouds, I think the simple headline is that almost everyone said that their firm was wrestling with take on and ongoing management. And I think the challenges of keeping control of cost, protecting data, and ensuring the security and compliance were called out by over a third of the organizations in the study. So it is a good place to focus. I think we might debate that these are there because they're high visibility and high impact, so they tend to rise to the top of mind. But in our experience, you know, potentially actually underlying symptoms of other gaps or under prioritized focus, and you can call out, you know, a couple of them. So one, skill convergence. So cloud tech these days is super powerful, and there are overlapping roles that were, you know, historically separate. What this is doing is it's actually driving new and different combinations of skill sets. So we're seeing more key person dependencies and operating risks from this natural evolution. I think there's what I call sort of cloud cost smokescreen, which is variable cost combined with this faster service access, a misunderstanding of cloud models, and maybe this lack of business demand modeling leads to the CFO actually losing clarity on the spend versus the business return compared to, you know, the traditional fixed bubbles of on-premise IT. I think maybe the third thing is this need to evolve the operating model, and it goes back to what I was saying about target operating models. You know, if they're not fully established, you can end up in your destination sort of ill-prepared to really sustainably operate. And I think operating models sometimes are underestimated. They are very complex beasts. They're slow to change, and it immediately opens this risk of creating this new legacy and this internal firefighting.
I
think that operating model is a really key point. I mean, we see something we call the program paradox. Organizations invest massively in the period of transformation with new skills being brought in and investment in contractors, consultants. But then, and everybody celebrates at the point of go live. But the skills investment and the operating model investment post go live doesn't see the same focus. So we still see that age-old problem of technology and solutions being thrown over the wall into an operations team that hasn't been built to be successful. They haven't been engaged in the transformation program, so they haven't experienced the troubleshooting and design decisions that are being made, and then therefore don't have that underlying skill set to fulfill their ongoing responsibilities. And that's also at a time when their business knowledge is desperately needed to support growth of organizational growth and changes in the business challenges and business objectives that organizations are focused on at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this points back to sort of getting some of those basics right and really challenging yourself in terms of, you know, where that intended benefit or set of benefits is going to be achieved. You know, start from a known baseline, you know, understand your business's commercial, you know, performance and risk drivers, you know, understand, you know, capture, communicate why you're technology and your cloud approach, is the way it is, and recognize that there are benefits and trade-offs to, to any approach. And it sounds obvious and it sounds really natural, but we still see a significant number of organizations sort of operating in these vacuums. So, define how the benefits are going to be achieved. Don't leave all the ambition in a document that never gets read again. Quantify, measure, and evolve your KPIs as you move forward, so that you can measure success or pivot when you need to, when these unplanned outcomes do strike.
Yeah, and just to add to that, the skills gap piece is really important, because a lot of people are moving into cloud, and this is pretty obvious, but I unfortunately it isn't to some, is that a lot of the procedures, and to be honest, the people associated with those procedures are based around old technology and old ways of thinking and old ways of doing things. And so, moving to cloud does actually require you to think differently about how you do operations and how you approach all these different bits and pieces of actually building and operating applications. And I think a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll try and look at a cloud and work out how they fit that cloud into their existing operations model, as opposed to what do I need to evolve to take advantage of this cloud. It's a basic thing, but a lot of people still make that mistake. And I think that the recent pandemic has helped a lot in that respect. And we've got one customer that was a bank, and that they managed to switch from a paper-based system where people were bringing paper into the branches to an entirely automated mobile app-based process within 2 weeks. Now you'd never have got that done pre-pandemic. If I'd walked into a bank and gone, yeah, you need to change this whole thing to being mobile-based in 2 weeks, they'd have gone, laughed you out the room and gone, that's a 2-year project, it will cost X million pounds. But I think they were forced to adapt their people and processes, throw procedures out the window, work out how to do things at speed in a new way. And I think a lot of organizations we're talking to have learned like that. A lot of your competitors out there, if you're watching this, are already starting to do this. So if you're not prepared to take risks and throw things out the window as you go, you're not going to make the most out of cloud, and you're not going to make the choices and decisions that I think you should be making in terms of stepping forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. Establish your target, even if it's a moving one. I think these days stargazing 4 to 5 years out, as the pandemic's shown us, is not necessarily as possible as it used to be, and we're living with uncertainty. So planning to have a future flexibility in your business, can avoid these material risks. And as Joe says, you've got to be ambitious and get up, but on with it, but don't get reactively backed in a corner with inflexible investments that may or may never achieve a long-term stated ROI. So regularly looking behind that horizon line is where businesses now are needing to look to anticipate where to evolve and adapt a bit more.
It's an interesting area where traditional infrastructure skills start to take on a business analyst capability as well, looking at how to support adoption and growth of the business take on of the benefits that the platform investments are making. The business cases all get defined right at the beginning, but unfortunately they tend to get archived at the point of go live. And actually, it's only through effective adoption and realignment of how to obtain business value from the capabilities that are now available, where the true growth and opportunities arise. And often it's taking or using that infrastructure awareness or IT operations awareness and looking at business enablement, looking at process changes and process opportunities or application delivery opportunities, which is where true underlying efficiencies can be achieved.
That's
great.
And
I think although we talk about sort of dynamism, I think communication is massively key. And I think because the implications are now different for the C-level, the CFO, the CIO, the CRO, security and compliance, there is a much greater need for alignment. As Joe's saying, think differently. And I think you need to be deliberate in creating that joined up leadership and then evangelizing it. The best strategies in execution are where that leadership is aligned, and communicate. Is always sustained communication, not communication on initiative. With the whole business, needs to be ongoing as well. I suspect these days.
Thank you. So I think understanding the challenges and the root causes of multi-cloud adoption and management is essential for any business looking at improving the IT solutions they offer staff or users. So now that we understand these, let's take a look at a solution a large number of businesses are turning to help overcome these challenges. In a multi-cloud world, managed service providers, or MSPs, are stepping in to help organisations manage increasingly complex environments. If I can direct this to Joe, how does VMware see the role of partners changing to support cloud customers beyond the license sale and deployment?
Yeah, it's a really hot topic for us because, if you traditionally look at partners, it was, fulfillment partners, helping people deploy, hypervisors, VMware Cloud Foundation, build out private clouds. That is changing, and it's changing fast. As I talked about earlier, we're now seeing customers actually approach this not from the infrastructure perspective, as coming to a partner going, I need to modernize my infrastructure, how do I do that? But moving much more to a process of sort of, as I call it, application portfolio planning, or looking around what the applications they're running on and where they should be. And I think that's where an MSP can really, really help, because what you're looking at there is not, what's the next best widget that I need to buy in my data center and how do I install and configure it? The install, manage, configure is not the piece anymore. It's much more around, okay, well, can you come and help me assess my application portfolio? Look at what I've got today. Plan me through what Gartner call the 5 R's of, retire, retain, replatform, rehost, all those kind of, refactor, etc. And join me on that journey. And I think that's the point. So an MSP is someone now who can look to engage with a customer and guide them through that journey of, well, this bit of application, actually, the best thing you can do with that is just keep hold of it for now and keep it running, because you've sunk the cost into that. There's no need to change it. It's fine. Leave it as it is. What we'll do is we'll help you optimize that in your data center, make sure you're running it most efficiently and it's backed up, and the operations model around it is perfect. But this one over here, actually, we could containerize that, which would mean you could then move it to be over there in VMware Cloud on AWS or the Azure VMware service or whatever. And this one over here, actually, you're probably better off starting a process of rewriting that cloud native. This, just bin that and move. There's a SaaS version over here, for example, you could be using. And what you then need to do is look at how you deliver those to all your end users and think about how they're consuming that. And that's when we talk about the digital workspace. That's a long, complex, involved process and conversation involving changing people, changing procedures. It's not just a classic upgrade widget text to the Okie dokie 2000 version that you're looking at a few years before. So I think really we look at VMware to be looking to our partners to be leading those conversations with our customers. And that's exactly where, people like Xtravirt step in as being so strong, because they are such experts in that space. So, if you're looking for someone to say, okay, well, what do I do next? What's my path? How do I make sure I'm not going to get myself locked into something I'll regret in 2 years' time? How do I make sure that I'm entering into a world that includes openness and choice? How do I move fast but not make decisions I regret? You're going to have to bring in expert advice there, because reading the internet and attending a few webinars isn't going to help. You need people on the ground that can actually help with that, and that's exactly why we work with our partners, who in turn work with our professional services to deliver those kind of levels of services to our customers. So to us, partners such as yourselves are incredibly important in helping our customers through that application modernization journey, which really is the next step we're seeing for all enterprises across the industry.
We're definitely seeing that in our customer network. We're seeing organizations approached us who may have traditionally looked at more of an outsourcing arrangement, lump everything into the same box and look to a single partner and move it across. But now it's specialized conversations. It's around a technology or an application domain or a component of their overall strategy, where they want to work in close collaboration, recognize the skills and knowledge, but also want that collaboration to be alongside their internal IT organization, who have the business understanding, who have the business skills and business capability contribution. And so working together, we can deliver an outcome that is much more powerful and is much more capable of being evolved over time, because no one 5-year strategy can be delivered now and expect to be steady state for those 5 years.
Yeah, and we always used to, there was always the joke in the industry, wasn't there, that outsourcing was classically your mess for less, right? It was, to take what you've got today and run it cheaper somewhere else. It wasn't necessarily an evolution project. And so I think that's where this is very different. You can't enter into this world now by just saying, okay, I need to find somewhere cheaper to do this. I need to find somewhere more efficient to do this. There's change involved. And contracting for change is very difficult in an outsourcing contract, is why they never really work. There's generally be, as I say, how do I do what I do today, but do it cheaper somewhere else? What you actually need to be doing is engaging with people on how you modernize. And that's a very, very different story and a different conversation to what you were saying, Robin, on traditional outsourcing, so to speak. It's understanding what the business actually wants to do and moving forward together on joint business outcomes, as opposed to looking at it from a technology perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that
I agree.
I was going to say, no, I was going to say, I think that's something the study really picked up on as well, you know, that it's not about just sort of, you know, outsourcing your mess for less. You know, the top 3 benefits expected from an MSP, which was something that the study looked at, was to give organisations a focus on applications and services, performance and developer satisfaction, which is, you know, quite a jump from security, cost and resourcing. Gavin, have you got any thoughts on why we're seeing this?
Yeah, absolutely, and I guess just quickly building on Robin's sort of outlook on this program paradox and the changing nature of skills. You know, when you've got partnership in there deploying, you know, complex, you know, sophisticated, you know, really powerful cloud technology, you know, everybody's super happy. As soon as those specialists, you know, leave the building, you know, this is where challenges can arise. And I think this is the kind of the theme of, you know, the MSP story changing. You know, it's actually, what's that life cycle look like? You know, what capabilities do I need? Which ones am I going to sort of focus on? And Emma, I suppose sort of coming back round to your question, yeah, I think those 3 were top priorities at around 50% level, you know, from the study, and distinctly above the 8 remaining expected benefits. And I guess this shows that the benefits that organizations are looking for from their MSP are beyond the basic hygiene factors of security, cost, and resourcing, which were actually near the, you know, the bottom of the list. And I think although those, you know, 3 easily support a business case for engaging a partner, I think once in place, we're seeing quickly that, you know, they do become hygiene factors, and IT, you know, leaders are increasingly looking for actually more strategic benefits. And I guess we could summarize that by saying, you know, as infrastructure becomes more mature and ability to be more standardized, commoditized, cloud-based, you know, businesses are naturally evolving their focus to actually, as, you know, what is important, you know, which is, you know, a more application-centric view of the world, you know, recognizing the implications to ongoing performance optimization. And I thought the 3rd one was really interesting and surprised me a little, was this recognizing the cultural implications and this reference to longer-term talent retention. And I guess that makes sense, because the skills market is incredibly competitive, and we don't see that changing anytime soon.
Thank you. So I'll move on to some questions if I can then. One question has come in. What's the cadence for reassessing your cloud strategy?
So that's a great question. And we're actually working with one university organisation at the moment. And the CIO there has made a really clear statement that this is the last strategy he's going to write, because actually the strategy is a strategy of continuous reevaluation, continuous improvement. There is no such thing as steady state, either in his technology landscape and his application landscape, or in the business environment that he's supporting. If the last 12, 18 months have taught us anything, it's expect the unexpected and ensure that you've got a flexible and fungible IT organization and IT infrastructure capability to adapt rapidly, to Joe's point much earlier, rapidly with business support, risk support, etc., to changing needs. So I think it's write something, but then anticipate it to change and reevaluate on a continuous basis.
I'd echo that completely. You know, gone are the days of the 2-year IT plan, the 3-year IT project, whatever it is. I had someone recently who I saw them talking about their 5-year SAP deployment strategy, and I just cringed. It was like, oh my God, that's you writing your CV or your retirement plan. That's not something that's focused on the business needs in any way, shape, or form. So, you know, what you really need to look at is exactly what Robin just said. It's changing to not having a sort of, you know, what's our IT strategy or IT plan. It's understanding that things are going to be flexible, things need to move fast. So actually, it's more about how do I build what I call resilience into an organization? And resilience isn't about building something as being big, strong, hardened, and hardened and fixed. Resilience is about being incredibly flexible and able to move and pivot fast. And resilient organizations are what's going to win going forward. So yeah, what's the case for reassessing your cloud strategy? One, I don't think you necessarily need a cloud strategy. What you need is a strategy around your applications and what you're going to do for the business. Then you're going to have to pick bits and pieces of clouds to support that, and just have an organization with the rules, procedures, and people that are flexible enough to take that into account and do that kind of thing. Because if you're not, someone else in the same game as you is going to be, and they're going to be moving faster. It's that simple. You can't be rigid anymore. Those days are long gone.
Yeah, thank you. We had another good question as well. It said, with so many challenges adopting and running multi-cloud, do the pros still outweigh the cons?
I'll start again, sorry. Yeah. Of course, I'm going to say yes, because I work for the company that supports and drives people to the world of multi-cloud. But the interesting thing about VMware is we don't sell a cloud, so I'm not actually interested in trying to get you all into my cloud. What I'm doing is enabling customers to do a multi-cloud world. And so I think, yeah, the challenges, there are challenges, of course, but the pros in terms of that flexibility, that resilience, that adaptability, that ability to move fast, and far outweigh the cons for nearly every organization I talk to. There's going to be limited subsets where they're just going to stay as they are, and that's how they operate. For most other organizations, that ability to see something new and pick it up and run with it, and move into a new segment of market, or find a new way of treating patients if you're a hospital, or find a better way of having outcomes for policing or whatever, being able to deploy new technology into police cars faster. Those are always going to be pros, but and the cons tend to be of your own making in most cases, based on existing procedures, policies, and sometimes government regulation and other industry regulation. In fact, the ones we see held most back are those industries that are heavily regulated, tend to be held back by outdated regulation rather than held back by outdated technology. But yeah, most definitely the pros outweigh the cons, that's for sure. And the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think looking at the causes of adoption, I mean, there are internal decisions that are made, and application suitability debates and that side of it. But there's also, a lot of external influences. A number of customers that we work with have commercial relationships, multiple commercial relationships, which require the sharing of applications and data that are designated on different clouds. So sometimes that's just unavoidable, and it is part of the plan to assess and manage that which is going to be out of your control in many cases.
So the next one, this is probably a good one for you, Robin. With skills gaps surrounding like a real issue, what stops companies becoming dependent on an MSP?
That's a great question, and it's one that we've been looking at ourselves. Let's go back to 2 points from earlier. One is the desire to not get into the old outsourcing agreements, and the second is not having a 5-year strategy that you're going to stick to. You need to, if you haven't got a 5-year strategy, you've got a flexible approach and a fungible approach to how you're running your IT, then you need that relationship with your managed services partner. You need to understand the skills and responsibilities that you are placing on them. You need to have an exit strategy and an understanding that as to where that partner has locked you in to their relationship, what tools are they bringing to the table that run in their environment, and to what extent are they helping you with your own environment and the outcomes that you own as an organization. We ourselves are defining our services on a modular basis, with the ability to move modules of capability in and out of the IT organization as their skills and capabilities develop and as their priorities change. Underpinning that with a contractual relationship that allows flexibility, because we're advising organizations to retain flexibility and manage flexibility. So to lock them into ourselves wouldn't match that objective.
I think, MSPs fit incredibly well into this agile way of working, right? So rather than having to hire an entire bunch of skills and to try, say you want to try, a particular technology, you say, okay, fine, we haven't got skills in that technology, right? We need to hire people with those skills, try it out, big project, multi-year thing. if you're with an MSP, you can literally tell the MSP and say, right, we're going to try technology over there. Have you got some expertise in that? Can you come in and help us support trying that? And if it does become successful, then you've got the choice of actually, hiring your own people with those skills, or training your in-house existing people with those skills, moving those skills over and moving on to the next thing and taking that forward. We're just kind of de-risking the whole, hiring skills process, because you're working out as you go with flexibility to bring people in with skills on a temporary basis as you need and teach you at the same time. So, it makes perfect sense to me that you'd want to use an MSP in a highly agile, flexible environment that you're living in, to be able to bring people in, try something out, and if it's working, run with it, train your people up and go, and then move on. It's an obvious one to me. I don't know about you, Gavin. Is that kind of how you're seeing yourself working with customers going forwards?
Yeah, and I think it builds on this. When you take a huge step in change and transformation, it's near impossible to get your operating model in place on day one. There might be an intent or an ambition to own parts of that operating model in the future, but you can't do it today. And so therefore, to be able to fill that gap, to walk across the road of doing that, you've got to maybe start asking your MSP different questions, or that partner who you want to support, in terms of, I'd like to do this in 6 months. I can't do it today. Can we do this in a way that doesn't achieve this lock-in? Can we be more agile and flexible in terms of what's going to evolve over time? And we're getting a lot more customers recognize that now. This is one of the ways of overcoming the barriers to change in cloud adoption and management, is to work smarter with an ecosystem of partners.
I think it also aligns to changes in the contractor market. Historically, organizations where they had a skills gap would have gone out, find a contractor, bring them in, and leverage that skill for a period of time, and then release them. That skill then walks away and never to return. So the knowledge that's been acquired and built into that individual is lost. And that's an ongoing risk to a business. IR35 has also brought challenges to that of its own. And we're seeing that desire to either invest in permanent organizations or look to longer term relationships to support ongoing change.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, I think we've pretty much reached the end of the session now. Thank you for all your questions, and thank you, gentlemen, for your most insightful answers. To close out the session, big thank you to Joe, to Gavin, to Robin, and of course, thank you all for attending and participating today. We're out of time now, so I wish you all a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Emma. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.